It's done. We now have a new GM. We now have someone who will steer the ship, and we will see how he does. I'm going to go. We'll have to see what this man has in store for the Maple Leafs. It's an interesting and exciting time. It's a closing of one chapter and starting another, so we'll have to wait and see what he has in store. Pretty happy about that. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Ryan from Seaway Sports Lounge, and this is another episode of Leafs Timeout. This episode is about my reaction about the hiring of Brad Treliving as the general manager of the Maple Leafs. I'm going to go over some points that I noticed about what he had to say on his press conference. I watched the whole thing last night, and I'm going to explain a little bit what I think about his thoughts and, of course, a general takeaway of his hiring. So with that, let's just hop right into it. So Brad Treliving is the boss of the Leafs. He is the 18th general manager that was hired. The press conference happened at 1 p.m. yesterday with Brendan Shanahan and himself at the podium, very similar to when Dubas and Lou Lamoriello were hired. It's an interesting press conference. It was good to hear from him. I didn't know much about him, to be honest with you. I only knew that he was the GM of Calgary and he had a pretty lousy summer last year, but I just know that he was pretty much the front runner through the whole thing. It really wasn't much other folks. I mean, some people were spoken to. Apparently, Marc Bergevin was interviewed. Apparently, a few other guys that were mentioned were looked at, made a call. But Brad Treliving was pretty much the guy that Shanahan wanted right from the get-go. And apparently he spent a few days with the guy and had long talks about, obviously, about how the team's going to be built or whichever, and basically almost like a interview over a 2-day period. So it's good to see. Now he had his presser, he sat down, and of course the questions came. And the one thing about him before I go into them is that I find that his demeanor and his humor and that is quite nice. It's quite good to see. He's not an uptight guy. Clearly, he likes to have these sayings and catchphrases like other people do. It was just nice to see that he was actually generally relaxed considering he's walking into one of the biggest markets of the NHL, if not the largest. And it's under the biggest microscope right now in its history. So he looked very comfortable at the table. At first he said, "Oh, it's so warm in here," and then and stuff like that to give kind of break the ice, right, with the media of the Maple Leafs. Anyway, it was interesting to see him trying to settle into an interesting conversation that he was about to have. So the first thing he said, of course, it was the first question he was asked, where does he sit with Matthews? And he said, of course, priority one is Matthews. I agree. He should be priority number one. I mean, he is the cornerstone of the franchise. Treliving said that he wants a working relationship with Matthews. So he intends to fly down to meet him and actually get to know him as a person. Probably ask him a few questions, kind of many questions about what his vision of the team is, where he would like to go as a player, just a general. And he said the general information and get to know him as a person. Like I said, get to know him as a person and to start working with him. He hasn't been talking to him through text, obviously, over the past few days. He was saying that as well. And then eventually they will get to contract talks. Now, also, what's interesting, Treliving has a solid friendship with Judd Moldaver. Now, Judd Moldaver is Matthew's agent. That's helpful. Super helpful for the Maple Leafs. We'll have to see if he can make it work. I believe he can. I believe Matthews should be signed long term. He is who he is, and you're going to continue to build around him, whether it's the team they have now or something completely different. But he, as far as I'm concerned, is the mainstay of the team. So good to see that he wants to get that started. I'm sure it's going to move rather rapidly as he gets settled into his job. So the next thing I noticed about what he said, which made me smile, is that he's trying to move the narrative away from Dubas's era. Now, what I mean by that is that he wants to get a rate. Like someone kept bringing up the words core four. So Treliving basically piped up and said, look, I'm not interested, like paraphrasing, saying that essentially he doesn't want to use the word core four. He doesn't want to focus on the four guys there. He wants to focus on the team, which is 23 guys that are playing for the Maple Leafs. He just wants to get rid of those type of things. And I agree that that needs to happen. The core four, I mean, it was all about them. Yes, the team was built that way, and it was hard to not move away from that narrative, but they need to start creating something new. And that's the start. Even though it's language, it's still something. He wants to make them as a whole team, and that's really good. That's good to know. And he didn't have any qualms doing that either. He didn't have any problem saying this is what I want to do. He didn't be all nervous. No, he's like, no, we're going to do this. This is how I'm going to refer things. So that's good. So he seems to have a good presence with himself, like he's comfortable and he's confident, which is good. So I like that. Next thing is that he understands the urgency of what's happening here. Now he's walking into a situation right now. It's different than Calgary, but it's still very pressing. He has a superstar center that he has to sign a long-term extension. I mean, technically they could let him go another year and then sign it, but that would be very dangerous, especially if Matthews has any intention of leaving. I don't think he does. He has that. He has Nylander's contract to work on. He has to figure out whether he wants to move off from Marner or not, which I doubt he will. JT's contract, not much you can do about that. That's pretty much ironclad. Then, of course, he's got 10 UFAs to sign, to whether sign them or not. And then he's got, his limited ability to work with the draft because of the restrictions Calgary put on it, which is for good reason, because he worked with them for so long. So he has a lot to do. And as he said at the end of his presser, he said the clock is ticking. He wants to get to work. He understands this has to get started. So I don't expect him to just sit around and start getting to know staff slowly. This is going to be a pretty rapid summer. And he wants to try to get as many of these items ticked off the checklist as fast as he can. That's good too. The next thing I noticed is that he is not a raw rookie like Dubas was. This guy is a veteran GM. He GM'd with 9 years with Calgary. He also worked with the Arizona/Phoenix Coyotes, whether I believe when they were in Phoenix at the time. He has worked with these two organizations. He's worked in a Canadian market, which is something else they brought up, which is important. The other thing is that he understands his job. Like I didn't have any feeling listening to him thinking, "Oh boy, who did we just hire?" He actually sounds like he understands exactly what he wants to do. And I think he does. That's good. I mean, to be the front runner that long and not have really anyone else, clearly this is what the vision that Shanahan shares with him. So good to see that. And, I know a lot of people are saying that he was the wrong choice, and I can't say one way or the other. At first, I was lukewarm about his hiring. I'll be upfront with you. I didn't know much about him. So it's hard to give an opinion on someone you don't know anything about, really. I mean, with the situation he faced in Calgary, which was awful to start with, I would think that galvanized him a little more. He clearly is, trying to make a name for, trying to help himself throughout the league, and he ended up landing this job. And I also like the fact he said he's not coming here to make a statement. He's going to make changes. We all know changes are coming. But I don't think he's going to make a super monster bold move here. I think it's going to be solid moves. He might move a core piece. He didn't allude to anything, but he didn't say, "Oh, we're going to run this together and all that." No, he said, "We're going to look at everything." And that's exactly what he needs to say, because he can't put himself into a corner around day one. He has to say everything's open. I'm not, he likes what he has, but he doesn't want to block himself that way. So I think he is a solid GM. I think he is what the Leafs need right now. I'll have to see how things go. That's what I feel with the fact that he's not a raw rookie by any stretch. Lastly, this is interesting. This is kind of a quick one I saw. He wants to do a collaborative style of leadership. Now I like leadership in general. I think it's an interesting subject. He's not going to be a laissez-faire style leader, as they say. He's not going to sit up in an office, which he made a point multiple times in the press conference. He said, "I want to be shoulder to shoulder with people and I want to work with them direct." Does that mean that he's going to be more engaged with the players? Is he going to work with them even more directly, whether it's through their agent or them personally? I don't know. But he doesn't sound like he's interested in just sitting in an office and people come to him and then he makes stakes. So he's going to get to know that. And that seems to be the consensus that would happen in Calgary, that he was very much involved with the workforce direct. And that's good. And that's a good thing you need. You need people that are with their employees right away. Like they understand where they stand, they understand the complexities that are happening. It's just good all around management. So I think that's important. And it's good to see that he's going to do that. Now, my final thoughts on all this. Obviously, it's day 2 right now. He said all the right things as a new GM would say. I mean, but I don't think he just canned the the responses and said, like the typical answers you'd hear. He actually has a personality. He seems like he's a funny guy. He seems like he doesn't he likes to he's not an arrogant person by any stretch, or he's a very much more down to earth kind of person with what I gathered and what I saw. It's early to say, but I think he's going to be a good fit for the Leafs. I think they need to move away from the idea of a raw rookie and then or a really old veteran GM like Lou Lamoriello, which they both had their good points, but this guy's kind of down the middle. So we'll have to see what he does. Having the Maple Leafs with unlimited financial help will be a very big difference for him compared to Calgary. I don't know what kind of budget he faced, but the Maple Leafs, as we all know, have the endless supply of money well that you can imagine. You know what? I think I'm going to give him a chance. I'm going to see what he can do. I think he's deserves that. I know many that aren't too thrilled with this hiring, and that's fine. That's okay too. I mean, everybody is allowed to their own opinion. I only, like I said, only knew a little bit about what happened in Calgary, but I don't know the ins and outs of his full deal. I read some trades that he did, and a lot of them looked pretty good, to be honest with you. He has a certain style he wants his team to be done, and that's important as well. He wants to put a stamp on this team. All in all, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with this hiring. I will give it time. We will see what happens in the next number of weeks. It's going to tell the tale pretty quickly if he wants to continue with the Dubas based team with the core four, as we all know it, staying, or will he make a change? Will he actually genuinely take one of them out and then make this his team, as they said on Overdrive yesterday on TSN? If they remove this one player, whomever it may be, then technically it is now Treliving's team. So that was a very interesting comment when I heard that, and that was very important. So I want to mention that. So I think we'll stop here. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Obviously, more content to come. It's never a dull moment as a member of Leafs Nation. So, and I enjoy doing these videos. So anyway, hope everyone has a great weekend, and I will see you in the next video.